Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Dancing Eyes Podcast, episode 16. My name is Frankie Caputo, and this is a podcast where I talk to people about Nystagmus. Before we begin this episode, I would like to announce that this episode of the Dancing Eyes Podcast has been sponsored by the American Nystagmus Network. They are a great resource to anyone whose lives have been affected by nystagmus, and I highly recommend checking out their website. A link is provided in the podcast description. For this episode of the podcast, I had my friend Nate on. Nate is a father who was born with congenital nystagmus, so we're going to talk a lot about fatherhood and how nystagmus affects that, as well as a bunch of other things. If you're watching this episode on YouTube and you haven't done so already, please hit that like and subscribe button. I really appreciate it. And also leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. Lastly, new episodes will be out on the first and third Monday of every month, so make sure to keep your eyes out for those. With all that being said, I hope everyone listening enjoys and gets something from this episode, and let's get on to the show. What's up, Nate? Can I call you Nate?
Yeah.
What's up, man? How are you?
Good.
Good. Well, I'm happy to have you here. I spoke to you. We've been talking for a minute now, for probably over a month, back and forth. We started on email.
Yeah.
So yeah, you reached out to me, and we've chatted back and forth. And we had a long phone call at one point a couple weeks ago. I think we were talking for maybe at least an hour. So
yeah, something like that.
So we're here now. We finally made it face to face.
Yeah. Then I kind of got like a little sick. Not anything serious, but I think what I told you was my voice was like half gone, and it sounded like I smoked like 3 packs of cigarettes. And I was like, I can't go on a podcast, and like it sounded really rough.
I appreciate you not coming on to the podcast.
It would have been, I was coughing, and like it would have been rough. So yeah.
Yeah,
it took a couple tries, but we finally made it. So.
Yeah, you sound good now. I don't think that we're gonna have to worry about the coughs.
I did not smoke a lot of cigarettes today, so.
Perfect.
Actually, or ever. So.
You don't smoke?
No.
Oh, okay. What about cigars? You smoke any cigars?
No. If my voice gets all weird without doing anything, I'm not gonna.
Right.
I'm not gonna smoke.
Yeah, you don't need that extra element in there. Okay. Well, so I thought that this would be a particularly interesting episode because you were the first guest that I have had who is a father and has nystagmus. And your kids don't have nystagmus, right? Is it just you?
No, just me.
Yeah, so, okay. I'm excited for this because this is interesting to me because I plan on being a father who has nystagmus. Not anytime soon, but one day I will be a father, and I assume that I will still have nystagmus when I am the father, unless something happens. So we definitely have to talk about that. First of all, I'm gonna ask you this because I think that as somebody who has nystagmus, like personal relationships, finding a girlfriend or finding a significant other, I feel like that nystagmus adds extra difficulties to this. And I used to. Like I've mentioned before in other episodes, I've been very insecure about it, and I'm getting a little bit better now, but this used to be a big insecurity of mine. Would you say that your nystagmus has played any role in your life like that?
In terms of relationships?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting. My wife and I are actually, we were dating since I was 17. So I didn't really have like a lot of girlfriends or anything. Like basically we just started dating when I was in high school, and then a couple years after I graduated we got married, and then a couple years after that we had our first kid. So that was a while ago, but I think that just says a lot about her in terms of it just sort of wasn't a thing in our relationship. And it just kind of kept going. So, I mean, she's a very understanding person, obviously. So we went through a lot, through young adulthood, through all kinds of things. And we dated for 5 years before we got married. So
I guess you didn't have so many trials and errors or just other relationships. I mean, this was since you were 17. So yeah, that's pretty much forever at this point. Yeah. I don't know. It's, I mean, like I said, I think that says a lot about her. And just like practically, I don't drive. So that was around the time where like the driving thing was probably most
was kind of like a focus in my life, where it was like the most apparent, where it's like when I was 17, most of my friends who were going to drive were driving at that point. So it was like just over the hill of where it was obvious to everyone else. It's like, well, I don't drive. So, I mean, there was kind of that whole thing.
So for me, I have a little insecurity here that I feel like it's going to be difficult for me. I mean, I'm working on it, but in terms of relationships, right? So I don't drive either, and I I struggle with the idea that I'm going to be in a relationship with somebody and she's going to kind of be the driver, like she's going to be driving me places. Have you ever dealt with that?
Uh, Literally every single day. that's that's probably now. It's not a thing between me and her. It's and maybe this is what you're saying also. It's a thing between like maybe like the perception of other people, because it's kind of like, well, the thing is like the guy is typically the driver of like in a relationship or whatever. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, well, if you go on a date, well, the guy has the car, uh, does the driving. That's just sort of like the uh, our society's like male role. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's probably why it just feels, I guess some of the feelings I deal with, uh, other than just like the frustration of having to ask somebody to drive me somewhere, which is incredibly annoying. Uh, it's more just maybe feeling like inadequate, or just like, yeah, like, hey, it would be really nice to be able to take somebody somewhere,
Yeah.
and I've never done that.
Yeah,
So
man, that's like the story of my life. Like you go out on a date, like I want to take the girl on a date. Like I don't want her to drive me, like I feel like
yeah,
it's not even like what you said. It wouldn't be a me and her thing, because if the girl's going to be in a relationship with me, like she's going to be cool with it either
mhm,
way, or else she wouldn't be in the relationship. It's more
right,
of like my perception on society and societal perceptions on the man and the woman in a relationship. And so, yeah, yeah, man. I can relate to you on the driving too. So, how do you, how do you get around? Like, how do you go to work, let's say?
I work like a mile, like 1.2 miles from my house. So I typically ride bike, or I ride an electric skateboard. I have a thing called a one wheel. I don't know if you've ever
Nice.
have seen
Yeah.
those. So that's pretty easy. Um, and also my wife works a mile from our house. So if it's raining or it's too cold or snowing, whatever, um, it's not a big deal. It adds an extra 5 minutes in the morning where she can just drop me off.
Hmm.
So the radius of uh, like daily whatever, like the most frequent places that we go are really close. So that just makes it a lot easier, where it's like, okay, if you're only going 10-15 minute radius to things, then it's not as big of a deal. Where it becomes an issue is like if I need to go someplace like 30 minutes away, or probably the biggest challenge, especially now that we have kids, is where there's not anything for her to do, where it's like too far away, um, that she can't go back to our house. So it's like, which she's just supposed to sit in the parking lot and like wait for me. But you can't really do that if you have two little kids.
Hmm.
So that's the biggest like logistical thing to navigate. So that can be kind of hard to deal with sometimes. Now I have family that helps out with rides, so things work out. Ideally, they could be better, but I've never found myself to be like stranded.
So, how important when you say it is to live in a place where things are close to home or things are close together?
For someone with nystagmus, um, or really like anything that's limiting their transportation, I say that's very important. But also, that's tough because I don't live in a city, and it has been. we've had conversations off and on where we've tossed around, like, if we would live, like, the nearest city to me is Philadelphia, which is like 45 minutes away. So if we moved to Philadelphia, then I could pretty much get anywhere all the time. And we probably wouldn't even need a car. We might still have one, but even our day to day would not really require driving between using public transportation and anything like that. But like, my personality is just not to live in the city. So it's kind of like, do you move to the city for the practical purpose of being able to get around easily, but then sacrifice like some of my mental well-being, where it's like, I really just don't want to live in a major city.
That's a conflict, man. Yeah, that's a conflict right there.
So it's, you got to kind of find like happy medium. So like for me, I'm fortunate enough to have a pretty good support system of people that are able to help me out. Sometimes it would be nice where it kind of becomes enticing, where it's like, well, if I lived in the city, I could just walk out the door and like go where I need to go, and I don't have to like bring anybody else into that. Like, I could literally just go out there and do what I need to do.
Yeah.
And I'm not like asking people for stuff or whatever.
Okay. All right. Well, you're a parent. Like I said, you're the first parent that I've had on the podcast who has nystagmus. Well, actually, you're the first father. I've had one parent. You're the first father. This is a question that I tend to ask parents. Let's say before you make the decision to have a kid, let's say the doctor tells you that the child's gonna have nystagmus. 100% the kid's gonna have nystagmus. Do you have the kid?
That's a tough question, because I mean, we're specifically talking about nystagmus here, where I could possibly relate to their experience a little bit, where it's kind of like, I might understand a little bit what they would go through if we knew for sure that they were going to have nystagmus. But then again, you insert anything else. Try to think of like, if we knew that our kid was going to be born with like a heart defect or something like that, it's like, well, would you, same question, it's like, well, would you still have the kid? It's like, probably. Like, I don't know. It's like, what is the criteria for not, that's a very interesting ethical question.
Yeah.
Because you're like, what is the criteria for deciding not to have kids? And I think that's probably a little, well, it is different for everybody. I'm sure there are people that just decide to not to have kids because there's maybe a health risk to the potential child, but I don't know. I don't think so. One thing, I'll give you like kind of a real world example. When we have two girls. When we were going to try to have our first child, we didn't know it was a girl at that point, but when we were going to try to have a kid, we went to my whole life, because of having nystagmus, I've been seeing a neuro-ophthalmologist. Now I pretty much haven't seen him. I don't need to go every year to see him or anything like that, because he said my condition is pretty stable, that basically nothing's going to change. So I saw him much more frequently, like up until probably like middle and high school. But he's always available. Mm-hmm. So I made an appointment, and my wife and I went in to see him. And I forget exactly how the conversation went, and however it went, he was totally reading into what we were there for, because we were interested to know the risk of our child having nystagmus. And he was like totally aware, whatever. And he was like, so basically you guys want to know, like, what's the probability that your kid's going to have nystagmus? And it was just really funny, because we're like, well, yeah, basically that's why we're here.
Well, so, what was the answer? What did he say?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember exactly what he said, but he was very reassuring, and basically said it's nothing to worry about. I mean, like, I think he might have used like my life as an example, is like, well, I don't have a horrible life. It's not like at least for me, I don't hate my life. I'm not like uh so nihilistic. So it's like, why if if you feel that way, why uh would your kid have reason to feel that way?
Right.
Um so yeah,
I
I
think,
mean
yeah, I think
that's
the answer to that question is, first of all, it varies among people, but I think
mhm,
the biggest criteria is how much does the nystagmus affect you, the person who's being asked that question. How much does it affect you? Because there's certain people who I've seen online who would respond to that question with absolutely not. There's no way I would have a
mhm,
child if I knew that they would have nystagmus. I've seen this a few times, and that's because the nystagmus has been so detrimental to their lives and their mental health or their personal relationships that they wouldn't want to put that onto onto their kid. And also, just another thing to say about that, because that sounds a bit pessimistic about nystagmus. I really think that all it is, I think it's, first of all, it's a mental thing. It's not about your eyes. It's who you are and
mhm.
how you feel about yourself and how well you know yourself. And if if you know how to love yourself and if you know how to be a good person to yourself and treat yourself properly, that will translate to how you treat the world around you and how you treat the people around you. So if you have a healthy balance of like self-respect and self-love, then the nystagmus won't bother you so much. So this is, it's a little philosophical or psychological. It's one or the other. But it's seriously, it's
Mhm.
like the people who are having such a big deal with the eyes. This was something that I didn't realize until later on. But this was like my perception in high school was like, man, my eyes are so messed up. I'm never gonna meet a lady, or I'm never gonna, like, friendships are gonna be difficult. How are people even going to want to be around me? These are all things that I would say to myself, but I was ignoring the fact that Frankie, like me, myself, I had problems that I had to overcome that did not stem from my eyes. And once you can start to overcome those problems, then the eyes become a lot less relevant, in my experience. So that's how I feel
Yeah,
about that.
absolutely. One thing that I've done um that probably goes along, I felt exactly the same way. And one thing that I've done to kind of put that put what you're saying into perspective is I've listed things that I can't do. Like it's a very simple, I don't know, like I just randomly did this one time where you make a list of here's the things that I can't do because of having nystagmus. Like I can't drive, I can't read the menu at a fast food restaurant, just all those things. Like I can't read signs, very specific things that frustrate me that I can't do that I wish I could do.
Mm-hmm.
That because of the nystagmus, it's like I'm just not going to be able to do it. So you make a list and maybe there's 20, 30 things on there. And then you go down and you make a list of all the things that you can do. And what happens for most people, well, I would say for everybody, if they have a positive view of themselves, is they're going to start listing things, being like, I can do this. I can also do this, and I can do this, and I can do this. And it can be like the most minute thing. It can be like I can walk up the stairs. I can do this or that. And what I think that exercise really helped me to do is it just puts it in perspective of like, okay, there's like a bucket of things that I can't do, and unless something changes with my vision, I'm probably not going to be able to do them. But there's like this endless, I mean, that list will never get done of the things that you can do. And it's just like every day you can just keep adding to that list. You're like, oh, here's something I can do.
Yeah.
Uh, I can wake up and like I can hug my kids. I can ride a bike. I can like whatever. And if you that really helped me change just kind of a view of life where it's like the nystagmus doesn't go away. It's like I always have those things in the back of my mind that like live. Like as soon as I wake up in the morning, it's like you're kind of like reminded, like, okay, here's those things you can't do. but it's like, all right, fine. Uh, but today I'm going to add more things that I can do to it. Um,
And the
so
thing with that list is the things that you can do, or there's more and more things that you can add, like you said, because you just can't think of them all. But the things that you can't do,
right,
that list is probably going to stay pretty stagnant. Yeah, there's only so
it's
many
so much
things.
harder.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's harder to add things you can't do. It's like, well, yeah, you'll get kind of the core things, but then
Damn fast food
you'll just kind of
menus.
shift. Yeah, man. I don't know. Well, have you? I don't really eat fast food, but when I was like younger, like hanging out with friends and stuff, um, I'm trying to remember. This was probably like 7 or 8 years ago. This is just like a sidebar about fast food. Have you gone to, and I don't know if they are still this way, but have you gone to like a McDonald's where they have like those giant tablet things
Yeah.
where it's like a,
Yeah.
but like you still can't read them,
I
and
can
you're
read
like,
those. I'm cool with those. I like
I
those.
can, like I can read like the menu part, but then like the payment thing is still separate. Like the one I used, it still had like a regular like credit card thing,
Right.
and like I
Yeah.
can't really read like the tiny thing. So you're just like, I had this like moment of like, oh no, like I can get so far, and then
I
it's just
thought
like,
I thought that I would be able to, but yeah.
yeah. But then if it's busy, then like people just start like waiting behind you. That's the worst. Like that makes my that literally makes my nystagmus worse.
Oh my
Like
god, literally, yeah,
uh
because you'll get anxious and you'll want,
anytime you're
yeah.
doing something and then people like start queuing up behind you, is like that's horrible for me. Where like where you're just like, oh, you just get like flustered because you're like, oh no, like they're
It's
gonna
getting worse.
whatever. It just keeps it's awful. I just remember being like, all right, from now on, I'm doing everything I can possibly do like from my phone, which is like now for the most part I can do basically everything from my phone. So
Yeah, the phones are good like that. You could just zoom in on things and they work out pretty
yeah.
well. Yeah.
Or I just find like I find a thing that I like, and I think this is probably a way nystagmus has impacted my personality, or maybe it's the other way around. I'm not exactly sure, but like I find something that I like. So there's I know like the staple items of a lot of places, whether it's like where something is, or just use like fast food restaurants as an example, or really any restaurant, is like I know that I got something there that is good, and then I just walk in and I just get the same thing all the time. Like I'm not
Same.
like just like whatever. Do they have Five Guys where you're at?
Yeah, they do, but I don't go there.
Okay,
I think they
so
do. Yeah.
I haven't been there in a while either, but that's a place where like their menu is so straightforward that it's a really basic menu. So I have everything memorized because it's only just like a handful of things,
Yeah,
and then it's
those
like a la
places are the
carte you
best.
ask.
Yeah.
So I feel like totally fine. I can just walk in there and be like, here's what I want, and like I never have to read anything or look. But
Yeah.
so much of my life is like so like habitual, where it's like I do that thing at that place because it worked out. So like I'm sticking to that.
Dude, yeah, well that's my whole experience with fast food restaurants. Like I'll get the same Wendy's is the baconator. I'm not getting anything else.
Yeah.
I don't look at the menu. Burger King is the is there's this burger called the Rodeo King. It's a big burger.
Okay.
I don't think it's on the menus anymore. It's like they don't keep it on the menus, but they make it for you if you ask for it. So,
Oh, okay. Interesting.
yeah. So, yeah, I don't really eat fast food, but if I'm ever going to eat fast food, it's one of those places, and that's what I'm going to get because I'm not going to look at the menu unless I go on my phone. Unless I go on my phone, but it's just like I don't care enough to go on my phone. So, I
Yeah.
keep the same things. Yeah. Okay.
I'm not like try new things. Like it's not because I don't want to. It's just pure convenience. Is like I just need to. I know what's there. Like I've created like whatever a comfortable version of that place, whatever it may be,
Hmm.
and then that's what I stick to.
Okay. So being a father here, none of your children have nystagmus, right? Neither of them.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess you must have been somewhat relieved when you saw that.
Yeah. I guess some of the relief. and maybe even on the other end of that, before having kids, some of the apprehension is, yeah, there's a risk that they might have nystagmus, and maybe I wasn't necessarily concerned about them having nystagmus. It was more, am I going to be able to take care of somebody who also has nystagmus? That was probably like the biggest apprehension for me, is if they also have a visual impairment, that's like you've heard the saying, the blind leading the blind. It's like it would be like the most literal case of that, basically, where you're like, am I, like, I have like my issues, my limitations. Now, on one hand, that could be like a bonding factor where it's like, okay, like I know their experience, like I can uniquely understand their situation in life. But also, on like a practical sense, it's like, well, if both of us are out doing something, if I can't see something and they can't see something either, I don't know, that could make things a little more complicated.
For sure.
So
So what's like explaining to your children what nystagmus is?
My daughter is, she just finished kindergarten, so she's only now, probably in the last year, becoming like aware. Like we've mentioned things to her, like about the driving, and little kids are like the most gracious, like little kids, and then when they kind of turn around, and little kids can be so gracious and like also so unintentionally like cruel to people.
Little
Like,
kids scare me, man.
Laugh.
That I don't.
Sometimes the stuff they'll say is like so pointed that you're like, wow, like the way you said that, like that was like straight to the heart. Like, and it's not intentional when kids do it. Like they're not self-aware on some of the stuff they say, but the way like little kids will say stuff sometimes, like you just gotta laugh at it. Like I get a kick out of like how direct some little kids can be, where it's just like, you wouldn't, like if they were like 20-30 years older, like that would be so offensive coming from like an adult. So
yeah, little kids have a way of making me feel insecure about something that I haven't thought about for like 3 years. I'll just like say something about my eyes. I'm like, oh wow, yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, thank you.
But just know that they're not, they don't have like the intent behind it. Like they're so like curiosity driven.
Oh yeah,
It's like they want to know because they're trying to get to know you, like understand something, and it's because they care about people. They're not like corrupted by like society and like whatever, like the hierarchy of, they're like my daughter's age, they're not really quite at the point where they've developed like cliques. They're not really bullying each other. Like they don't really fight yet.
Right.
Now the next couple of years that will start to change. But yeah, I mean they're just so brutally honest.
Oh my god. That leads me to ask you, because this is something I've literally done this before. Have you ever avoided eye contact with a kid because you don't want them to say something about your eyes? I've done that.
Probably before we had kids, I'm sure. I mean, I was like, when I was your age, I felt the same way about kids.
I've got kind of a beef with them. I've got beef. Guess you're too honest.
I was just like, I don't know. Like it was, before we had kids, I don't know. I always just felt, you just feel awkward because you're like, I don't really know how to relate to them.
Yeah.
But when you have your own kids, then you get to be around, especially when kids start making friends, then you, whatever. And you just have to get over the fact that they probably will notice, or my daughter might say something to her friends. Like I always wonder what she says to her friends about me. Like if it ever comes up, like if she's ever at school and whatever, the kids are talking about going somewhere. Mm-hmm. And I'm always curious if my daughter's just like, my dad doesn't drive because he's a visual impairment, like goes on a whole thing. I don't know. I'm not there. I don't know what she says. So
do you really have a daughter and a son?
Two daughters.
Okay.
I have a 9-month-old daughter and her name is Hattie, and a 6-year-old daughter named Eleanor.
And a 6-year-old's about to get out of kindergarten.
She just finished, yeah, like a month ago, so a couple weeks ago. So she's kind of, I'm not sure how much she understands, like how many things she's put together. I try to be very clear with her, when I say, like, I'll tell her what I can't see, just so that she knows. It's like from a young age, I think it's kind of my responsibility to coach her a little bit. And it's a good exercise for me because I've never really done that with anybody. I probably should have been doing that my whole life. But it's a good exercise that, when we'll go for walks a lot,
Uh-huh.
and whatever, where I can just tell her, or I'll ask her for help. Like, instead of asking my wife sometimes, it's like, or if my wife isn't around, I'll ask her for help just so that she can kind of start to get a sense of like what I can and cannot see. Because she can read now and she loves reading. So there's like some things where I'll be like, "Hey, could you read this mail for me?" And it'll be like an insurance letter or something.
She's like a little
And she'll
helper.
be like, "Yeah,
Yeah, there you
she's so
go.
helpful."
That's what's
Yeah.
up.
So
When did you start talking openly about your nystagmus?
just, you mean to like the general public, or?
Yeah, yeah.
um
Because I remember our phone call. You mentioned that we spoke about. You started doing that a lot later than I think a lot of people would.
I've been thinking about that more, and I kind of wonder, social media wasn't a thing until, trying to think, like, we had like MySpace and Instant Messenger and
I'd say got
stuff when I
Facebook in
was in.
2010. Maybe is probably when it started getting pretty
Yeah,
big.
so I think when I actually started using it, so that was after I graduated, to it really took off, and even then it wasn't. So in some ways, like, I didn't really have any reason. I just kind of, like, I was with a small group of people and I did what I did, and the people that I was around like knew about it. But as you go through life, things change. You meet new people, meet new groups of people, and I guess I never was totally equipped, or figured out like how to, when you go into a group of new people or a new situation, how do you, is it the first thing you bring up, or is it something that, um, you kind of let people figure out? And I mean, that's kind of what we were talking about on the phone.
For sure.
um, and that's something that only now am I really trying to be a lot more intentional about, figuring out like when's the time and place, uh, and how do I do it without making people feel uncomfortable.
I wish there was
So
a list. I wish there was an exact way to do it with every new person that you meet. If you're in this situation, say it now. If you're in this situation, bring it up here. Like, I just wish
yeah,
there was a rule book. It would make it so much easier.
society would be so different if everyone just followed the rules. But then again, that sounds like a very,
No, I mean just people for
what was the word?
nystagmus, right? Because
Yeah,
I think that it's something that we all really deal with. It's something that I deal with a lot. It's like, when do I mention it? Because at certain points, I feel like there's an elephant in the room, and like I have to say
yeah,
something about it, and I would rather bring it up than you bring it up, because oftentimes people don't want to bring it up. They don't want to make you feel uncomfortable, and they don't want to make you offended, so they just won't bring it up. But then they'll be curious the whole time. And to me, when I think of that, I think, I'm trying to have a conversation with this person and they're too busy being curious about my eyes. So why don't I just knock this out real quick so that we can actually have somewhat of a relationship here. So to me, that's like one of the first things that I try to do, especially if I'm intending on knowing a person, I'll bring it up. But if it's just somebody at like a gas station, I'm buying something at a gas station, my eyes are going crazy, I'm not going to say something about my
yeah,
eyes. But if it's like a coworker or somebody that maybe I'll be friends with, then I try to bring it up pretty quickly.
yeah. There have been times where I've taken that approach to just be like, all right, I'm gonna address this right away. But often, one of the things, like, the common response I get is, and maybe you've heard this too, you're probably just better at handling it than I am. uh, people, it starts to become like really negative, where like immediately somebody is like, oh, that's horrible, or like, oh, that must be, and just like, oh, now like this relationship is built on the premise that like you think my life is like horrible.
Yeah, you don't want to be
And it's
pitied.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's just like, oh no, like, uh yeah, or people are like, oh, that's, now, to be fair, there are a lot of people that I've maybe mentioned, or they just kind of know or whatever, and it's, I might bring it up further on down the line, and it's just, they're like, oh yeah, whatever, and it's fine, like
Mm-hmm.
literally it's not a thing, and it's like, okay, I think it's healthy to address it to a degree, like at the very least you have to like bring it up
Just say what it
somehow.
is, because people don't want to. You don't want people to think that you're high off of meth or something, or on MDMA, because that's the common one. Yeah, dude, I have another YouTube channel, and I posted something on there, and some random guy commented on it. I think he said, "Yo, everybody, he's rolling. He's on Molly. Look, he's got the shaky eyes." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm on Molly right now. I'm recording a podcast on Molly. It's exactly what I'm doing." So,
Yeah, it's like I'm doing whatever, like I'm going to my job, like having done drugs, but somehow I can still perform my job
oh yeah,
adequately. It's
yeah,
like,
right.
because that makes sense. It's like, have you ever seen someone like on hard drugs? Is like they're not like holding a conversation.
Yeah, yeah. I'll tell you what though, I've never told somebody about my nystagmus and had them respond in the way where they're saying, "Oh, that sucks. Oh, that's horrible." I don't think that I've ever had that before. Maybe once.
Really?
Yeah, maybe once or twice. Would you say that that's pretty common for you?
Yeah, it's a puzzling thing. Maybe it's just like the like local culture. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know, but that makes it hard, because then I feel like I have to like dig myself out of, like I have to
Yeah.
reason with them, being like, now for some reason I have to justify to you that my life is not terrible, because for some reason you think that my life, like because I can't drive, that my life is awful.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's hard. It can be, I find that it just gets hard to relate to the person, that like it kind of makes things awkward, because it's like, I don't know.
Dude, I
It's
feel you.
it's a weird spot to be in.
Honestly, what so I get kind of two different responses. And the first one is usually, "That's fine. I don't really care. Like that's fine
Hmm.
that your eyes move. It's whatever. I'm gonna treat you the same." Which that's probably the most common one. And then oftentimes I'll also get people who say, "That's cool. That's cool that your eyes do that. I've never seen that before." And that's
They're like overly positive. And you're
yeah.
like, okay.
I'm like, okay, cool, sweet. Uh, I would definitely have some people who will tell me that it's cool. I'm just like, okay, well, it's appreciated, I guess. Somebody thinks that it's cool. And I'll have other people that I'll talk to, and they'll tell me that they don't like when people say that it's cool, because then you're saying that like my eye condition is cool, like this thing that's brought me trauma earlier in my life is cool, which I get that perspective too. It is what it is. Not everyone's gonna respond the same way, but I'll also have people where they'll say that it's cool, or something like that, and they'll ask me questions about it, and I like that as well, because I feel like that usually the first question, I don't know about you, but the first question for me is always, is everything shaky? Is everything moving?
Yep.
Right?
Yep. Every time,
It's
like once
always
you
the
like,
first one.
I'm like, my eyes shake, and then it's automatically like, oh, so everything must shake.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not, I mean, I'm not like a neurologist or an ophthalmologist or anything, but that's not how like perception works.
Yeah.
Like,
I could see why you might assume that though. But our brains
but
do this
like,
thing where it stabilizes it for us. So
yeah, like think like so basic, like for someone without nystagmus, be like, does the whole like world move like when you turn your like the parallax or whatever? It's like every time you move your eyes to the left or right, like everything doesn't go with it. So like if my eyes are just doing that unintentionally all the time, like why would anything be different? I don't know.
yeah.
It's
Also, another thing is this is something that people don't even think about. They don't even consider it. So it's especially I feel like most of the people that I run into who meet me, they've never met somebody with nystagmus before, so it's not even a concept. Like
Yeah,
the idea of your eyes shaking around nonstop, it just isn't even a concept that people have even considered. So
I think that yeah, I'm totally fine with whatever people respond. Like if they want to know more, I think it's really important for people in our situation to be as gracious as possible, because people, if you want people to try to relate to you and to try to understand, is like they're not going to say things like properly. Like there's not like whatever, people are going to say things in a weird way. They might kind of feel awkward. So it's like I'd much rather have someone ask me all kinds of like really random questions, awkward questions, and like I do whatever I can to not make them feel like stupid for asking. And that's like a huge thing. And I probably should have learned that earlier in life. But like I think that's, if I were to give any advice to anybody in our situation, is like you gotta learn to be so like beyond gracious to people and let them ask questions. Like there's a line obviously where something can turn to like bullying, or like if someone is like whatever, just being a jerk. But I'd say more times than not, people just want to know.
right.
And if you bring it up, like you don't want to be the person that brings something up and then people respond to it and then they feel like, well, why did that person bring something up if they were just going to be like rude about it anyway? like they brought it up and then I asked them a question and then they got mad at my question. So it's kind of like, well, why did they bring it up in the first place?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I can. Yeah, if
so
you're gonna bring it, if you're gonna bring it up, then you got to be cool with hearing some silly questions. But I think that's just part of the
yeah,
game. It's just something that we have to deal with. I do like when somebody feels comfortable enough with me to joke about it. This is something that's kind of new with
yeah,
me. It's if somebody joked about it, it used to always bother me. I'm 21 now, so maybe when I was like 18 or 17 is maybe when it started to change. Maybe when I was 19, so even a little later than that. But if somebody brought it up, it would always offend me. Somebody would mess around with me or joke about it, it would always offend me, and I hated it so much. But like I said earlier in the podcast, the more that I evolved as a person, then like the more secure that I became with the eyes, then I like to joke about my eyes because it makes me feel like I'm, the same as everybody else. We make fun of other people for little things. I want you to be able to be comfortable enough with me to make fun of my eyes. I don't want people to feel bad for me. That's all it is. So if you're cracking some jokes about my eyes to me, then first of all, I'm happy that you're joking about that. You're comfortable enough with me to joke about it in front of my face as opposed to behind my back, because people, man, they like to talk.
yeah.
They like to talk behind our backs. So if you're joking about it to my face, then I'm happy that you feel comfortable enough with me to do that. So that's something that's changed with me within the last couple of years. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think that definitely comes with age. Now, just being older, it's not really something. I don't know. I'm not really around people that are like that would necessarily make a joke about that. But if they did, whatever. Like you just gotta let stuff like I don't have the time or the energy. Like if I'm gonna spend my day like being offended by things, it's like I have so many other things. I'm a pretty busy person. So it's like I have so many other things to do and to go on. Like I can't take up mental space being like offended by stuff like that. Whether someone did it intentionally or they're trying to make a joke, whatever. If someone's gonna joke around about it, then like fine. Like it's not gonna bother me. Now there is some people that maybe aren't the best at like reading a room, or like they might think that they're like comedic, but they're not. And like it probably is not just like something that they would say about my vision. It's probably like a lot of things they say about other people. Like a lot of the things they say just aren't funny. Like, you know what I mean? Where it's like, they're probably just someone who thinks they're funny, but a lot of the things they say are not funny. They
That's
just don't know how to land a joke.
and that's my
And
issue
it's
with
like, well,
people,
that's
man. It's like if you're gonna make a joke about the eyes, at least be clever with it. You know, at least let me
yeah,
hit
like
me with something original. Let me hear something funny here. I don't want to hear some
exactly,
some overplayed shit. Say something funny, and then I'll applaud you for it.
exactly. Like you got to make it land. Like that, yeah, 100%. Like I'll laugh at something if it's original, whatever. Like I won't be where it's like, man, you put time, like you sculpted that, like that's funny. But like some people just they just don't know how to, and I don't personally get offended because I'm like, well, if that's the way they tell jokes, like most of the stuff they say probably isn't funny. So like I'm still not gonna get offended. It's just like they're just not a funny person.
Then I'll just feel bad for them. Be like, man, how have you made
Yeah,
it this far in life without any sense of
yeah.
humor?
It's like, wow, you really try to be funny a lot, don't you? Like that would probably be my response to them is
Yeah.
like, I guess that was you were trying to make a joke, but it just didn't work.
I was talking to my most recent guest Sam about this actually because she's in college right now. She's
Uh-huh.
either in college or she's going and she's in college. Yeah, she's in college. So we were talking about the transition that happens with people and their personalities when they transition from high school into college. And what we were saying is, you know, there's a lot of bullying happening in high school, especially freshman, sophomore year, where people are still developing and learning more about themselves. And, you know, there's still bullying. But once you get older and once you get into college, you don't really experience that anymore. Like if somebody's bullying you in college in front of other people, that person who is bullying is now the outsider. Like the person who's bullying is the outcast. Like that person is not cool in college if you're bullying people. But it's different in high school, man. In high school, you can bully people and people will laugh and, you know, you'll be in groups and you'll get a good pop, but not in college. That's what I've
Yeah. I mean,
experienced.
I am going back to school now, but that's exclusively online, so I'm not in a classroom setting at all. But yeah, I think like the older you get, like if someone is still like going out of their way to like bully somebody like in their 30s, that just says so much more about like that person just hasn't moved on from like whatever the age of 12. Where
Yeah,
it's
and then
like
how lonely must they be, right? Like how lonely
yeah,
must
it's
you
like
be if your sense of humor hasn't
like I
developed?
can't like if someone my age was trying to like bully me or like whatever, trying to like be like a bully from whatever when I was in like eighth grade. If someone was still acting like that, but they were my age, I would just be like how could I possibly be like offended or like really affected by that? Because like the whole time I'd just be like, this is so sad. like 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 I can't believe that you're still
Likewise.
acting that way.
Yeah.
Like I can't be offended because this is so sad to watch that it's like I don't understand.
Yeah.
I would be really caught off guard because I haven't encountered like anything like that. Now maybe there's like public I don't know. I've
The
never
internet,
had
bro. Just go on
anybody
the internet. Just go on the internet.
yeah.
That's where they are. That's where they reside. It's the dark pages of the internet on the backside of YouTube. Yeah, that's where the people stay. Or yeah,
Yeah.
not so much in real life, but yeah, YouTube is brutal.
Yeah, I've never met like a real life person who talks like a YouTube commenter. Can you
No.
imagine like that would be like I don't know. I guess that's kind of like a Karen, but not really. But like, can you imagine like you read like the YouTube comments, but if you met someone that was just like verbatim that, but like in real life, like whatever, you're at the grocery store and like someone is just like speaking as if everything is like a YouTube comment, it would just be like it would be so bizarre.
I know. Yeah, that reminds me of my bits that I have for my stand up set. I've got a little joke about like how in the rappers like just blurt out words sporadically for 2.5 minutes. Like in the rap songs, they'll just like with their ad libs, they'll just go yeah yeah a skirt skirt. Like they'll just do all that. And I'm like, you can't do that in real life. If you do that in real life, they're gonna try to medicate you. But you can do it in a rap song. I was like, rappers could do that in a
It's
song and they'll
true.
get laid, but if I do that in aisle 6 of a Walmart, like they give me first aid. Like
Yeah.
it's messed up, man.
That's good. That's funny.
Yeah, it reminded
It is
me of one of my
true.
bits. That's why, dude, I want to
Like,
hang out. There's something about comedians, like obviously it's their craft to put together jokes. So I want to I want to find a comedian and hear the jokes that they make about my eyes. I'm curious to see what they would come up with because I would use it. I would ask them for permission because, dude, honestly, I for my set I should do something about my eyes, but I haven't really thought of anything yet. For some reason, I can make jokes about a million other things, but it's difficult for me to think about jokes for my eyes.
so, so you haven't really built your set or like whatever, call it like your stage personality. You don't mention nystagmus at all.
Dude, I don't mention all my jokes are about other things or things that I do that are funny, but I don't mention anything about my eyes, which I have to. I have to do it eventually.
Interesting.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
that's what made me who I am, are my eyes. Like, there's so
Yeah.
many things that have made me who I am, and led
You
me
have like
towards
a unique
comedy.
perception.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think like all the things that are like, I don't know.
I had like one thing.
Have
I had one thing that I was working on where it's like maybe I was born during an earthquake and my eyes just never adjusted. Like, I don't know, man. It's like I haven't dedicated too much attention towards it, but I gotta
do
think
you
about
know
something.
the comedian Mike Birbiglia?
No, I don't.
Okay. Uh, I'll have to send you a couple of his specials. I really like his style because he's like a storyteller and like the way he tells like life experiences. Like his comedy is really interesting because it'll be it has like serious moments where he's like he'll tell like real life stories. Like I think his one special focuses a lot on his experience with him and his brother,
Mm-hmm.
so it's really funny and he has like a really dry sense of humor, but then it has like a couple like serious points through it, but not like he's trying to like make a statement or anything. Like he's not trying to make like a political statement or like whatever, nothing, but it's just like it has these like sentimental like slices of life in it that I think are really cool because it's like it really balances out the comedy. uh
That's something that I want
but
to
like
do with my
yeah,
comedy.
it's like the style is like you could bring in like your experience with nystagmus, and it's like well, there's so many like comedic elements to that, but then you can also use that as a way to like educate people on whatever really whatever you want to like
Bring
how
awareness
has
towards it.
nystagmus. Yeah, and it doesn't have to be like a whole political like everyone needs to know about nystagmus. It's more like how do you make it personal to yourself of like what is how has nystagmus affected who you are,
Mm-hmm.
and like it's crazy how like interesting that is to people where like it makes you, even though whatever the chances are that 99.9% of the people that will see you don't have nystagmus, it just makes it like so real to them where they're like oh yeah, and like they can still relate to you even though they might not have had like the exact experience that you've had.
That's one of the things
And
with stand up, right? Is you want to be relatable. So it's a little difficult with the eyes just because nobody's heard of it. It's not relatable for anybody. So you have to say something in a way that it's easy for, for people to comprehend and then potentially even make it
right,
relatable by comparing it to some other thing that they could more better relate to. So, yeah.
yeah, it's amazing like what things probably parallel with nystagmus. It's like you can talk about a really specific thing but like bring in like a greater audience. Like I don't know, I mean I'm sure there's things that resonate with everybody because like having nystagmus has like certain implications, but it's not like exclusive to like I'm sure whatever go back to like the feelings of like how I feel kind of inadequate sometimes not being able to drive
Mm-hmm.
is like really like zero in on like that emotion or that feeling. It's like well for me that's because of nystagmus, but I'm sure other people feel that way because of something else. I don't know, you know what I mean? So I don't know,
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of potential, like
I
you
got to
could
give
lay
you
the
a phone call
groundwork.
when if I ever put together like a 10 plus minute set, I think I'll do something for the nystagmus. Right now I've only got a 5-minute set and I have a 6-minute set. But eventually, I'm working on some new material, and I want to get. It's tough to find enough stage time to get on stage for more than 5 minutes, just because I'm only doing open
Yeah.
mics right now. But
Okay.
I gotta get you on the phone during a writing session so that we could brainstorm some Nystagmus stuff, because I
Yeah.
gotta get it into my routine somehow. I've been procrastinating
Yeah,
on it.
man, you got the wheels spinning. I'm not like a comedian or anything, but that's like I've always if you can
Yeah, but
put like
you're a thinker, and that's what
yeah,
comedians are essentially. Is you have to think to be. You're
if
never
you
gonna
can put
find like
like
a
a
dumb
light,
comedian. You know,
I'm sure you can find one. But
these comedians they make fun of how stupid they are, but they're just joking. These people are smarter than they lead on. It's not funny to be a smart person. It's just not funny.
yeah,
It's more funny
that's
to talk
true.
about how stupid you are.
That is very true.
Yeah. You know, but okay. Well, I think we've been going for like an hour here. Is there anything that you want to talk about that you don't think that we've hit?
It'd be interesting to get your perspective on like finding having like a purpose in life. Like how do you this gets kind of philosophical,
Let's do it.
but like having nystagmus like doesn't change like I'll use myself as an example. Like that doesn't change the fact that I have like hopes and dreams for my life. Like
Mm-hmm.
anybody with nystagmus is like, well, I want to do something with my life. I want to make an impact in the world somehow. Um, but then you also just have to balance that with like there's literally some things I cannot do. So you're always kind of walking this line. And I think before we started recording, we talked a little bit about like your how do you find identity with having nystagmus, where sometimes it's like at the forefront, where it's like I have this condition, and I need to totally own it and make it a part of who I am in order to move forward. But then there's other times where you're kind of you have to find a way to like put it to the side and be like, I'm not going to let that hold me back.
It's
And
essentially what
it's
it is, right? You know, there's certain things that you do in your life, especially if you're searching for meaning or fulfillment. Something like nystagmus is almost irrelevant when you start to get to that level. If I'm looking for reasons, like if I'm trying to figure out how to be a happier person or a more fulfilled person, nystagmus is not in my mind when I'm thinking about that. So in a way, I am putting it to the side, but it's not like I'm consciously putting it to the side. It's not like I'm like, okay, I have to take my nystagmus and forget about it for a second. It's not like that, because I'm already thinking about like how am I gonna what am I going to do with my life that's going to actually make me happy? So I will say this: the only thing that the nystagmus has really affected in terms of my self fulfillment is the podcast. That's pretty much it. I always wanted to do the podcast, and when I was younger, I always wanted there to be a way for me to find other people who have nystagmus and hear them talk about the things that I'm struggling with. And I always wanted to hear people like who are fathers with nystagmus, or people like Apple App, the guy in the Black Eyed Peas. I gotta get this dude on here this year because I want to hear how nystagmus has played a role in in his life. So I want to hear all these perspectives, and there was nothing like this. So I thought, to me, this would bring value to me, and if it brings value to me, it must bring value to other people. So if I'm gonna relate nystagmus to my fulfillment, or like, you know, value that I find in life, things that I look forward to, I could bring the podcast up and say that the nystagmus is really, I mean, obviously influenced this. So 100% this. Now, in terms of other aspects of life, other places in life that I find meaning that aren't this, dude, I mean, this is like, my whole life, I was always not so happy up until pretty recently, because I would always have ideas that I want to act on, and I'll always have dreams and aspirations and things that I want to do, but I never quite wanted anything badly enough to actually start taking actions to manifest it into my reality. So I would just think about all these things and be like, yeah, I would like to do that, but I just don't want it bad enough. I just don't want to do it. And then this podcast was so a little under a year from now was kind of the first step that I started to take in the path that got me doing other things. But finally starting the podcast and filming that first episode with my boy Eric, filming that first podcast was a huge first step for me. And, you know, I've found fulfillment in this, and it's helped a lot with, you know, when you have these ideas and you don't have enough willpower to follow through on anything, it leads to depression. Like, that leads to a very depressing life. And I've experienced that so much. Dude, when that pandemic first started and we were in quarantine, those were the worst few months of my whole life. I got up to 205 pounds. I looked like a marshmallow. I shaved my head, so at one point I just looked like a marshmallow. I'm only 5'7". I'm a small guy. I shouldn't be 205, but I was 205, and you know, I was really depressed, and I had my hair, and I was like, I might as well just go all the way and just make it as bad as possible. So I was like, I'm gonna get rid of this real quick. Yeah, so I have pictures of it. Yeah, I was a mess, man. So I did that, and I was super depressed. And so I'll say that the podcast was the first step in me finding some fulfillment. And then the next thing that I did was I started kind of evaluating myself, and I started learning more about myself and learning more about what I'm actually interested in. And not enough people do that. Not enough people ask themselves questions. Not enough people really get into like the nooks and crevices in their own mind and figure out like what is best for me. What do I actually enjoy? And yeah, so I started doing that, and I started writing on a daily basis. I started journaling, probably like 2 pages a day, so maybe like 800 words to 1,000 words a day. When you start writing, that's for me, that's like the best way to learn more about yourself is to start writing, and you start to learn some things. You're like, oh, I actually like writing about this. This is interesting to me. Let me keep writing about this. And then this leads, things, you know how it goes, man. Like you start one thing, it just leads to another thing, just leads to another thing. And you don't know what it leads to because you don't think about it when you first start something, but it just leads to other paths. And then starting this podcast has, led to me, let's say having that sponsorship with American Nystagmus Network. And because of that, I'm definitely going to be coming out to the future conferences and potentially, be doing podcasts in front of a live audience. I think if it weren't for this podcast, I wouldn't be doing stand-up comedy. If it weren't for this podcast, I wouldn't be journaling every day. If it weren't for this podcast, I wouldn't have the Skeptical Hippo podcast, which is my other podcast. There's so many things that I just wouldn't do without this. So I just went on kind of a tangent there, but it's so important, man. It's like something that not enough people talk about, is like finding meaning in their life. So
it's probably the most important thing. And yeah, I think nystagmus has caused me to go to some places in my mind that I don't think the average person really thinks about. And probably what I suspect maybe, this is just kind of my theory, is what you've found when you started the podcast is you feel like you kind of like pulled a thread, where you start pulling on it. You're like, okay, this is leading to something. You don't know exactly what, but the act of starting the podcast, you kind of found purpose outside of yourself, where it's like you need to do something that involves taking your experience and relating that to other people. And that's often where people struggle a lot, is they just think that purpose will just kind of fall in their lap. or like hit them over the head.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just sort of like somewhere in my life, people are just going to give me my purpose.
Yeah.
And that's not really the case. Is
No.
you gotta go out there, and you have to start pulling the thread yourself. And I feel
You gotta be
like
you gotta be proactive, right?
yeah, like people's purpose is found in how you relate to other people. Your purpose in life is not in a strictly internal, like I have my purpose, I don't need to do relate to anybody else. Your purpose is kind of like all of the bridges that connect you to everybody else. And that's really where people will find meaning. um yeah, I mean, I've thought about, I think really hard about a lot of stuff, and sometimes it can be, I think I tend to overthink things. But if I didn't have nystagmus, I never would have kind of gone some of those places in my mind that I just would have been like a normal person. So I feel like I've learned a lot about myself and other people, and how people work. Um, but yeah, I think it's awesome that you started the podcast, and I'm really glad you did. Um,
Thank you.
because it's one of those things where it's like, I wish I just kind of assumed in life that it's like, well, I'm just gonna have my life, and maybe some point I'll come across somebody with nystagmus or whatever. But
Mm.
before you started the podcast, it wasn't even like a thing else on my radar where it's like, oh, I need to connect with people, or whatever. It's just sort of like, I'm the only one that I'll ever know with nystagmus, and I'll just deal with it, and that'll be fine.
Yeah.
So then it just kind of like, you think about what you did, how that affects all of the other people, not just like the guests you have on the podcast, is the people that listen. Is like, you're helping people hopefully start to pull their own threads, where it's like, okay, whatever, through the conversations, hopefully that inspires people to kind of to heave themselves up and be like, all right, I'm gonna do something. And a lot of the people on the podcast and probably listening to the podcast uh, are, I don't want to make it seem like everybody's depressed, but I think the other thing with the podcast is it's fascinating to hear how all the other people have kind of gone through life, and it's very inspiring, because it's like, wow, like look at what all these people have done. Like, when I first found the podcast, I went back and I listened to all of them, and it's just like, it's so impressive, where you're just like, that's amazing. Like, I have no reason not to be happy, no reason not to succeed in what I'm doing, just because of having nystagmus.
Yeah, man. Nystagmus can do that to you. It can make you it can make you feel different than everybody else, and be like, there's all these things that other people are doing, and I'm just not going to be able to do it because of the nystagmus. And I think I totally agree with you. It's so fascinating to hear all of these stories from everybody who has nystagmus, and it just didn't let them, it didn't get in their way, and it shouldn't get in your way. And
Right.
it shouldn't stop you from doing anything. And fuck those doctors who are telling people, sorry for cursing, whatever, these doctors, man, who are telling people, parents of children with nystagmus, that they're not going to be able to do anything. You know how many people I've had on my podcast whose doctor told them that they couldn't read, that they're not going to be able to read? Or I've heard this a couple of times.
I've heard it a number of times.
Yeah, or the doctors will. That's right. You've heard the podcast, but like the doctors will tell people, you're not gonna be able to pick out the Cheerio from the whole something. Sorry, Greg, I don't remember what you said about the Cheerio. Something about the Cheerio, man. But yeah,
I think it was, if they dropped a Cheerio, they wouldn't be able to find it on the floor. If I'm remembering, if that's the right person.
Yeah, that is who I'm talking about. Greg, it's Alex's dad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I've heard a couple things about Cheerios. It's not even just from one person. It's like the doctors had a conference and told each other, like, yo, if you ever get somebody with nystagmus, you got to bring up the Cheerios, man. You got to say the Cheerio thing.
That's just frustrating to me, because that goes back to the list thing. Is like, why wouldn't the doctor, like, you want to tell them, be like, here's, like, as a doctor, be realistic. Like, you don't want to say, like, whatever, you're going to be able to have a life like somebody with 20/20 vision, but also that's like the most nihilistic approach. Like how's that helping somebody? Like you might be like medically informing somebody, and I guess that's technically a doctor's job.
Right.
But also to be a doctor is you need to like you're treating people, and people have feelings and consciences, and so be like here's like you might not be able to drive, you might not be able to do this or that, but there's going to be a lot that you can do in your life, and you have nothing to worry about. Like I guess if I was a doctor, that's what I would tell someone. Be like, this is going to be hard if you're not going to be able to drive. It's going to be really hard. Make sure you have like a support system. Like there's some things that you will not be able to do, but there's going to be plenty that you can do. So like, don't worry about it. You're going to be great. You're going to make it, whatever. I guess like if I was a doctor, that's like, I wouldn't just be like, here's things you can't do, so bye.
Later, have fun with this.
Yeah, like what a I don't know, like that doesn't
just
help
ignorance,
anybody.
man. It's ignorance. They just don't know. I've had doctors tell me that I can't wear contact lenses. Meanwhile, the majority of the people I've had on my podcast wear contact lenses. So, yeah, man. It's like, don't let the nystagmus get in your way from doing anything. The worst thing that I can think that nystagmus can do for you is not allow you to drive. Meanwhile, probably 60% of my guests drive. So there's that. So,
but like, I don't know the exact statistic, but it's something like 60% of the rest of the world doesn't drive. So, I mean, like we're fortunate to live here in America and whatever in a very well-to-do country. So it's like there's a lot of people that don't have nystagmus that will also never drive. So I guess there's that.
There's that too. Yeah, that's something to look at.
Our society is like Western society, just kind of it is what it is. And I mean, it's fine to be here, and very fortunate to have been born here and stuff. But the weight that people put on something, to me, as trivial as driving, like I get the functional point of it. Like it's a very important part of infrastructure, but also the like, I guess like the social weight or whatever that people put on it is like, you have to have a car, and like you have to be able to like drive places. And if you don't, then you're not a real person participating in society.
Yeah.
It's like when you take it that far, is like, I don't think it's that extreme. It's like, whatever.
It's never
there's
that
like
extreme.
10 cars. Yeah, there's like, from where I'm sitting now is like, I can think of like 10 cars. So it's like, okay, well, I don't have a car and I don't drive, but like I can just walk out the door and like somebody will drive me somewhere. So like,
the Ubers are getting expensive too, man. I don't know if you Uber
my
at
area,
all.
I have in the past, but I haven't like in a couple years, just because I mean to go like 20 minutes into the nearest city or to go anywhere, it's $40 or $50.
Yeah,
I mean it's insane. It's like I can't afford. That's like $100 to go 20 minutes on a round trip. Now I realize gas is expensive, but like nobody's paying $100 to drive like 30 miles.
I know. Yeah. The price, they're just getting more expensive. Yeah, if I want to go 8 minutes down the road to my Publix, it's a $12 Uber for an 8-minute drive. So if I want to go to the grocery store and I want to come back, it's $24. So
yeah, that's crazy.
I'm good. Yeah. Let's end this episode here. Let's finish this off. Well, I appreciate you coming on here, Nate. I appreciate that a lot, man. And I appreciate everybody who's listening and has made it this far. So in case you guys don't know this already, the podcast is available on YouTube. It's available on Spotify, Apple Music, anything like that. We're also on Instagram. You could just type in Dancing Eyes Podcast on Instagram. Also there, I post clips of the episodes. I try to get a couple clips a week on there. So what else? What other things do I have? Shout out to American Nystagmus Network for sponsoring this. Yeah, if you're on YouTube, a like and a subscribe, that'd be dope. Thank you.